Hello and welcome. Today I'll be presenting my end of the semester project, Book Club. So to start off, a little bit of an overview of the Book Club. Book Club serves as a social media platform for bibliophiles to share their thoughts on literature. So jumping right into it, the first architectural style that I had initially thought of when I came up with the idea to implement Book Club was the MVC models, views, and controllers architectural style. It's pretty standard amongst web developers, and I think it really aids to how you can understand how the data flows from the user down all the way through to the database. As you can see, the user interacts with the view, and the view is going to present them with options, and through those options, their input is parsed out through the controllers, which then change the models, and the changes to the models are stored in the database, and then it is sent back up to the view to show a conditionally rendered different outcome. So here's a little bit of the class components of the MVC style. There's a lot going on, but mainly there are two classes, the user class and the book class. So the user class is generally used for login and registration, and it helps keep track of which users posted which books. Meanwhile, the book class represents a collection of objects that are generally the only thing being posted. So it'll describe what the book is, describe the ISBN number, and it'll hold that data. And one user may post many books. However, each book is posted by one individual user. So it's a one-to-many relationship between users and books. The second architectural style I considered implementing for this project was the Blackboard style. However, it wasn't quite as useful for my purposes as the MVC style was. Now, the Blackboard style is definitely useful in understanding how conceptually the project could come together. However, technologically implemented, it's a little bit lacking. The class diagram ends up being almost the exact same thing, mostly due to the fact that you can only represent a one-to-many relationship between users and books in one specific way. One thing I would like to point out, however, is the dependencies between PyMySQL and my controllers and my models. So I'm using PyMySQL as a way to connect my Python backend to my MySQL database. And that is generally implemented and shown in the third sector of the leftmost diagram. Now, the pros and cons of both. So Blackboard provides flexibility. It allows for different components to be developed and tested independently, which make the system more flexible. Blackboard's also very modular. It's very easy to reuse components, and you are offered a little bit more flexibility than with the MVC style. Some of the cons of the Blackboard style are the complexity. The Blackboard style can be complex and difficult to implement, particularly for smaller projects like this one. There's difficulty in reasoning with Blackboard style. The Blackboard style can be difficult because it involves multiple sources working together to achieve a common goal, and generally lacks a little bit more of the rigidity of the MVC style. The MVC style, some of the pros, there's a separation of concerns. The MVC style separates an application into distinct components that handle specific responsibilities, which makes it easier to manage complexity and maintain the code base. And MVC also promotes testability. By separating the application logic from the user interface, this makes it easier to test each component separately and ensures that changes in one component do not affect others. Some of the cons of the MVC style are the overhead. The MVC style can result in additional overhead as it requires additional code and coordination between the components, i.e. PyMySQL and other dependencies that you have to implement in order for the entire project to run. This can lead to decreased performance and increased development time. And another con of the MVC style is the learning curve. The MVC style has a steep learning curve, particularly for developers who are new to the architecture. It requires significant investment in time and training to become proficient. Even more specifically, using a framework such as Flask for Python for my backend, which I did, creates a little bit more rigidity than a classic MVC style because you have to follow some of the Flask framework's rules, on top of that. So overall, MVC can be kind of difficult for developers to get the hang of. However, it lends itself incredibly well to web development. I eventually chose the MVC style as the main software architecture that best describes my system. Some of the rationale behind that are that the separations of concerns, particularly with the MVC style, makes it suitable for web development. And when you're developing a social media website such as Book Club, it is very important to follow industry standards for web development. Allowing for separation concerns between the data model, the user interface, and the application logic, it makes it easier to manage the code base and improve the maintainability of the application. For Book Club specifically, I would like to add more features down the line, and I believe the MVC style allows for that possibility to occur. The MVC style is also better in performance than the Blackboard style, as it involves direct communication between components rather than relying on a shared data structure. This can lead to faster response times and improved scalability. And familiarity. Obviously, the MVC style is widely adopted in web development. So I decided to stick with what works. Now it's time for a demonstration. So upon launching the project, if you want to access it, you have to go to a specific directory, obviously Book Club directory, and then you initialize it through activating the server.py file. This is after, of course, you're already inside a pip environment shell. However, that is only for development purposes. Upon deployment, you don't have to specifically worry about being inside of a shell. And this is generally what the terminal will look like when your code compiles and your website launches. If you look at the bottom of that picture, it says running on HTTP 127.001 :5000/. That is the URL that you would put into your web browser to access your website once it's up and running. And once you get this message, that means that at least the first web page of your project works. So to go a little bit deeper, when you log in, this is the output that the terminal will show on the server side. So as you can see, something very interesting, the password key value pair in that object is a hashed password. It's industry standard to hash passwords before you store them in a table, so that if your table is ever, or if your database is ever compromised, basically the data is useless unless you have the hashing algorithm, access to the same hashing algorithm that the developer used. So that's something that I thought was pretty important in this, was adding that little bit of security. You can see the output in the terminal also shows a query from my PyMySQL connection. That is the literal query that is being accessed in the database from the information that the user has input on the screen inside the text box. And then down kind of in the bottom half of that picture, that object is the response showing that one, the object, the book, was created by a specific individual, as you can see, first name, ID, last name, and then title represents the book. So upon successful creation of that object and successful storage in the database will respond with the object showing what it just saved. And finally, here is a screenshot of our terminal on post method, just a post method and an updating method. I made sure to include full CRUD capabilities with this website, as I will show you in a second. But this is generally just another response showing a successful request. All right, and now we're going to navigate over to the website itself. So first off, I'm going to log out. Here is the root route. So it is the home page, and there's a register and a login. So just for example, let's see what happens when I put something in that is not registered yet. Invalid credentials, you get the flash message right there. Let's see what happens when you put in the correct information. You're logged in. Great. Let's register a new user just because. John Smith. Oh. J. Smith at email.email. And I have the password preset as part of my development package, but obviously, if this were to be deployed one day, it would be changed. So we now have John Smith added to the book club. Welcome to John Smith. And you can see the books that have been posted by the other members of the book club. So I added this at one point earlier from a separate account. Now you click on it and you can see it. That's awesome. You can click on your account and you can see what this user's information looks like here. You can update your information and you can see the books that you've added. Let's go back to the dashboard. Let's log out again. Let's log in somewhere else. Very similar. And let's add a book. Why not? Let's go with the SMU handbook. Why not? ISBN is unknown, and the review is it's okay. It's an okay handbook. So let's add that book, and here it is. And then we can refresh the page just to make sure everything has saved in our database. Some other interesting things I've implemented with this is route guarding. So if I copy this, and then I hit log out, it'll clear my session. And when it clears my session, I am no longer have credentials to view this, and it won't let me go to a page beyond the login page until I log in, and that login information is stored in my user's session. This is just, again, pretty standard in any website that has a login feature. Generally speaking, using cached information is how you would keep users from how you would keep the wrong users from accessing information from behind the login screen without having already logged in. So one more time, you can see this is the root route. Let's go to the books route. Can't get there, but we can log in. And once we log in, we can get to the books route. Another interesting thing, the log out clears the session. That's kind of how that all works. We can delete books that you've posted. So Harry Potter got deleted, unfortunately. And we can update how the user's information looks. So overall, great project. I had a good time building it. It has more functionality that will be coming in the future, but so far as it exists now, it is everything I want it to be. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.